didn't want to go off. I mean, he had 2 fouls on Foden that were outrageous, and then didn't want to go. I thought the behaviour was very, very bad. And I think Simeone doesn't try to stop that. You know, he seems to be part of it himself, Nathan. I mean, he's done a great job there, but the behaviour usually is not very, very good. But I thought the 2 matches against City, it was awful.
We've seen this type of behaviour from Atletico Madrid through the years, and in a way it feels like a key component of their success, that they're willing to do anything and everything to win a game of football. Did they go too far last night? Oh,
definitely. I mean, it's no harm being aggressive, Nathan, and want to win the game and getting stuck in. That's all part of the game. But when it goes beyond that, and you see players kicking and pulling their hair, actually, at one time last night, again from last week, I mean, everybody wants to win a match, and there is a limit to what you can do in terms of behaviour. And I think Simone's team goes beyond that on a lot of occasions.
Is it in any way a fair tactic to try and unsettle a team of Manchester City's calibre, who may be one of the most expensively assembled squads we've ever seen? Atletico Madrid don't have those sort of resources. That they need to find a way that's not just in terms of the football they play, but another way of unsettling teams when they play them, and this is just how they go about it.
Well, there's nothing wrong with unsettling teams, Nathan, as long as it's within the rules. I mean, people get stuck in and they can be hard. You know, there's always been teams like that, and the harder you are, obviously, the better. But it's got to be within the law. You know, you can't go kicking people and pushing around and shoving and pulling hair and all the various things that they do. You know, there is a limit to it. Of course you want to get stuck in. You want players to be aggressive, but in the right way. You know, not breaking the rules and being really, really bad, and obviously encouraged by the manager.
What about Manchester City in those closing stages then? It felt like they didn't massively react. Maybe at times when Foden was trying to roll back onto the pitch, he was inciting them a little bit with that. But in how they held themselves together, Pep Guardiola was talking afterwards as to how proud he was that in the face of all that, his players held their nerve. Did they approach it in the right way? I think so. I mean, if you look at Guardiola over the years with the teams he's been involved in, you never see behaviour like that. Of course they have players that get stuck in, and you need that, but you don't have to misbehave in a way that's just outrageous. And I think if you look at City yesterday, they didn't respond in a bad way. They didn't deserve any of their players to be sent off. They took it, and they took it well. And you know, Atletico Madrid definitely came back into the game, and City were struggling towards the finish. But they didn't react in a way that to get any of their players sent off, or nearly sent off even. I was going to say there were a strange couple of games. Maybe they were exactly what we should have expected in that in the first leg. Manchester City just dominated possession. Atletico Madrid happy to sit back, soak it up, and almost did that with the concession of just the one goal. And for an hour last night, it felt as though, again, Atletico Madrid, you know, were happy to take their time, be patient. In that last half an hour, were Manchester City fortunate to hold out, or was it good defending? Why was it that Atletico weren't able to get that goal, despite the fact it felt like they were quite dominant in the last half an hour?
Well, it was a bit of both, Nathan. I thought they defended well, but Atletico had a few one or two chances that they might have scored from. So, you know, City got away with it in the last 15, 20 minutes because they were hanging on to that one goal that they had last week. That's what teams normally do in that situation. They fall back a bit, they're hanging on to the goal, and they did it. So they got through, which is the main thing, Nathan. And I was glad to see them getting through, to be quite honest, because I wouldn't like to see Atletico getting through on the way that they played the game and their tactics, and which I thought were very poor and outrageous at times.
When you look at the way Thiago Simeone sets up his side, can you understand why he approaches it like that? Like, it's been so successful from up against the powerhouses of Real Madrid and Barcelona that when he took that job on, if he just went about it in a purely footballing manner, he never would have been able to match them on the pitch. Do you understand with the resources and the lack of them that he's had to deal with? And listen, they've spent money through the years as well. That he has found a way that works for him, even though nobody else really agrees with it.
Well, you get a lot of teams like that, Nathan, that play matches. You don't agree with what they do. You don't agree with the way in which they play, but they're usually within the laws of the game. You know, and if you're playing the way he plays, and I can understand that, there's a lot of good points to him to make the most of the players that he's had over the years, because he, as you say, he hasn't spent the way some of the big clubs have spent, and he's done a huge job in that way. But there are times when he steps over the line. It goes beyond getting stuck in and making it difficult for the opposition. It just becomes ridiculous, really. I mean, that big centre-half, I mean, the tackle he had on Foden, how he didn't get a sent-off or a yellow card at least, is incredible. And they are noted for it, for stepping over the line. You know, we've seen teams in the past, I played for Leeds United, who didn't take any prisoners either, and had players sent off. And that wasn't right. So you have to play within the rules. And Atletico can be hard, which they are, and they don't always behave the way they did in the 2 matches against City. You know, sometimes they're okay. That's if they're winning. You know, that's what the manager's like. When he's winning, he's okay. He's smiling. He doesn't go overboard. But when they're losing, you know, it's a great thing to have what he has with the players, to get them to give everything they've got, Nathan. As long as you don't step beyond that line, and that happens at times with them. So I have a lot of admiration for them when they play the way they can play and don't go beyond the bounds. But sometimes they do, and I think they did, especially the other night against City.
He is often linked with some of the bigger jobs around English football, and that behaviour is held against him as a reason why he shouldn't get those jobs. Do you look at does that for you discount him from ever becoming a Manchester United manager?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it in many ways is exactly what Manchester United need, because he doesn't stand for any nonsense of players. No, I don't mean kicking all the time, Nathan. But the work rate is fantastic. A lot of what they do is fantastic. He doesn't stand any nonsense away for anybody not getting back when they should, not giving everything they've got. There's just at times he steps over that line and it becomes not good, not professional. It's a lot of rowdyism then at that particular time. But most of the time he doesn't. I mean, obviously when they're getting beaten, it stirs the players up a lot more. And they did too. I think in the 2 matches they overstepped that line. But he doesn't do that all the time. I think he's been a great manager and a great coach for Atletico. What they've done over the years against Real Madrid and Barcelona, all these teams that had more money than him, has been fantastic. But there are times when he steps over the line, and definitely in that match the other night, they stepped over the line.
Manchester City have got the job done over the last week in that they've progressed to the semi-final of the Champions League, and they had the 2-2 draw with Liverpool on Sunday. It's been spoken about as one of the great Premier League matches. What did you make of it?
I didn't think it was, Nathan. I thought there was 4 goals in the game, which made it entertaining in a certain way. But the manner in which 3 of those goals were for really, really bad defending from both teams. And if you're going to have a top match, then everything has to be good. You know, you could have matches with 6-6, and it could be exciting in many ways. But for 2 of the top teams, I mean, before the match, I fancied Liverpool. I thought City deserved it. If anybody deserved to win it, I thought City deserved to win it. But there were too many goals, 3 out of 4 goals that were really, really bad defending. And I think in 2 top teams in a real match, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen, but it did.
Why do you think it happened?
Well, it was just. Well, from Liverpool's point of view, you have this high line. I saw a bit of the match last night. The goals, actually. I don't know if you saw it, Nathan. You know, the opposition scored 2 goals that went to VAR because of a high line, which is the offside trap. And if you take the goal that Jesus scored from the free kick, Trent Alexander was with him. And next thing, he's gone and he's on his own. You know, Walker for one of the City goals, I think it was Mane's goal. Mane gets behind him. I mean, how he doesn't see him, I don't know. Gets in, scores, and takes the goal well. But these things in a top match, in my opinion, shouldn't happen. And you know, if you go to the match, you know, with Chelsea and
Real
Madrid, I thought that was a real game. You know, the goals were good. They were really, really, really brilliant. If you look at Modric's pass for the goal, a really important goal, it was brilliant. I thought the play overall, there was nobody given, despite a lot of goals being scored, there wasn't anybody giving anything away. They had to be well taken, these goals. Whereas in the City-Liverpool match, I thought the goals, 3 of the 4 goals, were really, really bad defending. And in a classic game, that doesn't happen in a classic.
Was the Mane goal was that not just quality attacking? Was that not the ball from Salah that made it impossible for Walker to defend?
No, Walker made it impossible for himself in the position he was in when the ball was passed, Nathan. I mean, Mane was always behind him. Now, if he's behind him, he's got first of all, where he was, he couldn't see Mane. So Mane was behind him already. So he's got to be 5 or 6 yards back, where he's got Mane in his sight. And when he goes to make the run, he makes the run. But it was as if he didn't see Mane there. That's really, really poor defending. And Alexander's defending for the Yazoo goal from the free kick was outrageously bad as well.
In terms of some of the individual performances, I'm interested in your thoughts on Thiago in midfield for Liverpool, because the first real chance of the game that Raheem Sterling should have taken, you know, he just completely outpowered in midfield, wasn't quick enough to get back and cover, didn't seem to spot the danger. But then a few minutes later pulls off this outrageous crossfield ball that sets up Liverpool for and maybe it sums up Liverpool, that when he's in possession he's outstandingly good, and out of possession maybe there's not as much expected of him as there would be of a more traditional midfielder. Where are you on Thiago and his importance to Liverpool?
He's good when he gets it, Nathan, but he should be getting it more. You know, he should be dictating the play. That's the position he's in with the ability that he has. And you can pick out that pass quite rightly, which was a terrific pass for the goal. But if you look at, again, I'm going back to defending. If you look at the defending from City, in that situation, it was awful. But as far as Thiago says, when he's on the ball, he's capable of doing good things and hitting great passes. But he should be doing them more often. You know, in other words, if you're in the position, like, again, I'll go back to Modric, and I'll talk about Modric in a few positions. He's on the ball all the time. Thiago gets the ball now and again, which means that he's not in a position to dictate the play. And that's what the great midfield players do. If you look at Modric the other night, he was on the ball all the time, hitting a terrific pass for one of the goals.
Yeah.
But he's always there. He's on the ball. It might be 6, 7, 8 yard pass that he gives, or 10 yard, but he's on the ball. He's dictating the play. Thiago comes into it, hits a terrific pass like that, and you don't see him again.
And is that just positional awareness? Is it the way that Liverpool set up with Fabinho?
You know, yeah, it's usually. I mean, when you see, first of all, there's only one ball on the pitch, and there's 20 players, outfield players, competing for space to get on the ball and do it. So what the great players like Modric do, they don't. It's not by accident that they get into the right place, and the ball is usually coming back to midfield players like that, so you can see everything in front of you. That's the thing of midfield play like that, is the positional sense to be able to get on the ball and dictate it from there. If you don't have a positional sense, you're like a stop clock. You get it twice a day. Do you know what I mean, Nathan? In other words, in Thiago's case, he doesn't dictate the ball coming to him. The ball just comes to him because he's in some parts of the game. In other words, if you stand on the centre circle on that spot for 90 minutes, you get X amount of the possession of the ball, Nathan.
Yeah.
Standing there. But what the great players do, they get round the pitch at the right time to be receiving the ball, so they dictate play from there. That's what Modric does, and the great midfield players. Thiago doesn't do that. When he does get it in the right position, he is capable of making the pass that he made the other day. But it's only now and again.
What about Kevin De Bruyne's performance? I know you've had doubts about his attitude at times. It did feel that was, you know, one of his standout performances in recent years. Really dragged Manchester City through it at times.
Well, he did. But you see, in my opinion, with De Bruyne, he doesn't play in midfield, Nathan. he plays sort of right side of midfield and not attacking. He's in between both. So in the position that he's in, he can't dictate the game because he's too far forward and he's not in a position to dictate. But when he gets it, he's good. Now, sometimes I find him a bit moody. If somebody hits a bad pass to him, he's throwing his hands up in the air, or one of his passes is not made the most of, he's throwing his hands up in the air. And he's a very, very talented player. But he's not a player that's going to dictate the midfield for you. But he's a very, very good player when he does get the ball. And he's dependent on other people to get the ball. And he's had a good run recently. He scored a good few goals, which from the position he's in, he would be expected to score goals because he doesn't play like a midfield player that's going to dictate the game. From the position he's in, it's impossible for him to dictate the game. But usually when he gets the ball, he's very, very good on it. And he's had a good time recently because he scored goals. And he needs to score goals from that position.
Yeah, it'll certainly be a bit of a blow for Manchester City if he ends up out injured for any significant portion of time after going off last night. And just finally on Manchester City, 2 huge games over the last 4 days, and Jack Grealish doesn't start either of them.
No, well, he hasn't been playing well, Nathan. I mean, Bernardo Silva was the best midfield player. They're lacking a little bit in midfield, what's the other, Rodri. I'm not a fan of Rodri's. If you look at him, Nathan, he passes the ball A to B, sideways most of the time. He doesn't score many goals, he doesn't make many goals. And I know he's regarded as a defensive midfield player, but I think you could expect more from him in that position. And in fact, Manchester City don't have a player in midfield that can dictate the game. Bernardo Silva is the best one. He gets on the ball more than anybody else. And he's very, very good. But Jack Grealish, I feel some sympathy for him, Nathan, because they paid 100 million for him to get him from Villa. At Villa, he played as a left-side midfield player. When he's playing for City now, he's an outside left. And when an outside left gets the ball, he's expected to go and beat players. But they didn't pay 100 million to play him in that position. He was a left-side midfield player, and he could go from that position across to the right. Now
and is he good enough, John?
He's expected as a left winger to get the ball and beat players, and that's not what they bought him for.
Is he good enough to play in that position, that deeper position in that Manchester City team?
Yes, I think if he played as a left-side midfield player, you'd see a lot more of him, Nathan. It's a bit like buying a centre half, and you play him at left back. They didn't buy him when he played at Villa. He definitely did not play as an out-and-out outside left, and that's what they're trying to play him at Manchester City.
I guess the biggest difference is that at Aston Villa, everything went through him.
Well, but again, Nathan, if he was playing left-side midfield, a lot more would go through him at City. If he played at Villa as an outside left, the ball wouldn't be going through him the way it went through him when he played there, because he was playing left-side midfield, and he could wander a bit more and get in the game a bit more. When you're playing on the left wing like he is, you have to stay out there. You're dependent on people to get the ball out to you, and he's not the natural left winger.
You touched on the Real Madrid-Chelsea game and the quality of it on Tuesday night. When I saw the pass from Luka Modric for the Real Madrid goal, bending it with the outside of his right boot in behind the Chelsea defence, I was thinking of you straight away, John, as you'd be salivating over that, considering how big a fan you are of Luka Modric. He's still got it.
He's great. He's great. I think if in the position he plays in, which is a deep line midfield player dictating the play, Nathan, as long as you can keep yourself fit, now I mean fit, right, you can get better and better, because the positional sense gets better and better. In other words, you could take the game going. Again, I keep going back to positional sense, because there's 20 players on the pitch competing for space in relation to where the ball is. Now, if you see him on the ball, sometimes it's only a 10-yard pass, a 12-yard pass, but it keeps the play going, especially when you're up against them, which they were the other night. He got on the ball, and then the players like Modric are capable of hitting that pass at the right time, Nathan.
Is that a difficult pass, John?
Not for him. Not for him, Nathan. Once the ball's in the right position, he's hitting it with the outside of his right foot to curve it round the player. Of course, it's a great pass, but not for him. That comes natural for him. He'd see that before it ever happened, Nathan. Do you know what I mean? That's what these great players do. They make it look easy. I mean, a lot of players would get into that position and they'd hit the ball too hard or too soft or too high or too low. And the great thing about Modric, he's capable of those passes, but there's an awful lot of game goes on before those passes come into play. They only come on now and again, Nathan. You know, once in a blue moon that pass is on. The other passes, like the 6-yarders, the 12-yarders, this is taken, especially when Chelsea were getting on top. Now you need somebody to stop that. And the best way to stop it is, like Modric gets on the ball, a 12-yard pass here, gets it back, gives it to the right back, gets it again. So when he's doing that, that's taking the pressure, because there's only one ball on the pitch. And if he's doing that, which he does, at the right time. Now, you could go, like with him against Thiago. Thiago, when he gets the ball, doesn't know how he got it. Modric knows exactly how to get it, when to get it, and then deliver it in the right way. And then from that position, when you're on top, Nathan, and you're 2 or 3 goals, now he can hit the longer passes. You know, the ones that might get there, might not. You can afford to do it. But when you're playing against Chelsea, and Chelsea do what they're doing, somebody has to get a grip of that game, or else Chelsea would run away with it. And he did that. And then the bonus was laying on the pass to get the goal for his team.
And all the more brilliant for Modric to do it, because Chelsea were so dominant at the time. They're leading 3-0 on the night, and I think it was one of the best performances we've probably seen since Thomas Tuchel came to the club, and just how relentless Chelsea were. And for Modric, even then, 10 minutes from time, to be able to produce something like that, it's just magic. And
he produced a lot before that, Nathan, with the bread and butter passes, we call it in the game. You know, in other words, when you're up against it, his job is to get it, give it to his pass, to one of his players. Might be only a 10-yard pass, just to take the steam out of it, as they call it, right? Which he did, right? But then when it comes to making the pass to score the goal, this is what the great players do. They do the bread and butter stuff when it's needed, and then they can produce that type of pass when it's on. And that's what makes him a great player. I think he's 36 now. But as long as he can keep his fitness to a fitness, he'll get better and better, because the older you get and play more games in games like that. I mean, there's an old saying in football, Nathan. There's a fella that's played football for 10 years, and he still only knows as much about the game as his first game. And then you get somebody like Modric, and they learn from game to game to game to game, and it gets to the stage where they become masters of the profession and do the right thing, get this short pass at the right time, but always in the game, and making the passes when it's on to make that great pass that he made the other day. That's what makes Modric great. So as long as he keeps reasonably fit, he can play for another 2 or 3 years.
When you look at what he's achieved, and winning 4 Champions Leagues, but maybe even more impressively, bringing Croatia to a World Cup final, you've seen them all. When you're going through a list of greatest ever midfielders, he must be on the short list. Oh, definitely.
He's up there. He's up there, Nathan. You know, the great thing about Modric, there's no big-headedness about him. You don't see him trying to show off. He's a professional all the time. He was born a professional, and he's doing it, and he's making the most of what he has. And what I find with players like that, people say he's 36. Well, when you start the game at 21, you're running around, Nathan, and sometimes you waste energy running around because you're not making the right position. When you get to his type of player, and obviously has the knowledge to do it, you don't waste a step. You don't waste a step. You know, every step that you're going to take, this is going to count. You're not going to go dashing, running, hoping to get the ball before the centre forward. You don't do anything like that. You hold it, you keep it, and you come in at the right time, and then you express yourself in a way that when you need a goal, you've got to be more adventurous. When you're up against it and the other team are getting on top, you have to know, right, this is what I have to do. A little pass here, a little pass there. Take the danger out of the opposition, from the opposition, because there's only one ball in the pitch, and do it. And when you see Modric play, that's what he does. That's what he does all the time. You never see him where you could say, where's Modric? I don't see him in this game, because he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows where to be at the right time, where not to be at the right time, and get on the ball, and has the ability to produce like he produced the other day, and occasionally score a goal himself. And they're called master midfield players. Pirlo had it. There's a few of them around that had it. You know.
Yeah.
They don't come every day of the week. But he's been there for what? 6, 7, 8 years, I think, at Real Madrid. I think he's won the Champions League, 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, 4 times,
And no bother. You don't see him getting into trouble. There's no controversy about him. Too busy getting on with the job.
All our football coverage is brought to you by Sky. Don't miss Newcastle against Leicester on Super Sunday. It's live only on Sky Sports. I did want to ask you about Jesse Marsch, some comments he's made over the last 24 hours. Now, he has made an impact, 10 points from their last 4 games for Leeds. It looks as though they're now clear of the relegation zone. He was on TalkSport talking about the difference and what he's trying to implement that as a change from the Marcelo Bielsa era. And he spoke about the injury issue for me, because one of the big reasons we have felt, certainly for Leeds' struggles this season, is the fact that so many of their key players have missed so much of the season, whether it's Bamford or Phillips or Cooper. He said, the injury issue for me has a lot to do with the training methodology. These players were overtrained and it led to them being physically, mentally, emotionally and psychologically in a difficult place to recover from week to week, game to game. When you look at what has happened with Leeds this season, is there a certain truth in that?
I don't think so. I think, first of all, I found an attack on Bielsa was from him. I think it's outrageous and unfair. And what he's saying is about the training methods leading to the injuries, which got them into trouble. Now, the thing is with Bielsa. Bielsa's been there, 3 or 4 years, Nathan?
Yep.
Right? He's been doing for the last 3 or 4 years what he did this season. Now, during that 3 or 4 years, he took Leeds from nowhere from the second division, or the league, into promotion, got promotion, and his first year there, I think he finished 7th, 8th or 9th in the league. Doing what he did. That's what got him to that position. Now, Marsch is coming in saying, now because of that's what he did, would led to the injuries this year. What about the previous 2 years when he took them from what was the second division up in, and having a great season in the Premiership? That's what he was doing. And Bamford said at one time, he scored more goals under Bielsa than anybody else, and he said he was responsible for getting them into the fittest he's ever been. He's took Phillips through in the 3 or 4 years. I think it's outrageous for a player to come into the club at any stage and criticise the manager that he's just replaced. I think it's wrong. And if he's saying what he's saying about Bielsa, which is this year, and there was injuries, clubs get injuries every year, and he's probably been lucky, Bielsa, in the previous years that he didn't get it. But he hadn't been doing anything else this season, Nathan, that he hadn't been doing for the last 3 or 4 years at Leeds. And I think that's unfair and wrong.
It does seem naive, I think, from Jesse Marsch to make these comments, considering, firstly, how loved Marcelo Bielsa is still by the Leeds United supporters. While there was an acceptance, maybe it was time for a change among a lot of them. I think they all recognise what he has done for the club and how he has brought them back and the excitement he has generated. And a month into the job, to question him, and the body of work that he has, it just seems bizarre that Jesse Marsch would bring himself into this level of controversy so early into his reign. Well,
he's showing off, Nathan. He's shown. Listen, look what I've seen. I've seen it in their faces that they're worn out, right? And my attitude, I won't read it out to you because it'll be a bit boring, of my attitude to what I think should be right. So what he's saying is, Bielsa was all wrong what he did, but I've noticed what's in the players and I'm putting it right. Good luck to him. But you can't run Bielsa down for what he's done and criticise him in the way he has. And first of all, I think any manager taken over from another professional manager shouldn't make any derogatory remarks about the manager. If he's sacked, he's sacked. You get on with the job in the way that you do. And I think what he's doing here, he's been very, very unfair on Bielsa to say what he's doing himself. He's got a long job on his hands yet, Nathan. And there might come a day when he'll be sacked himself. And I hope no other manager makes the comments that he's making about Bielsa, because Bielsa can't react to that now. He's away and gone. and I think it's very unprofessional and wrong for any manager, new manager coming in, to criticise Bielsa in the way he has done. And I think he's doing that to give himself another little pat on the back. There's a long way to go yet.
There certainly
I hope he does it for the Leeds fans' sake, but I think it's wrong for any manager to go in and criticise the manager who has been sacked that they're taking over from. It's very, very easy to do that.
John, great stuff as always. We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, Nathan, thanks.
John Giles there with us every single Thursday night on Off the Ball. If you missed any of that, you can get it on the OTB Sports app.